The Golden State Valkyries just waived Cheyenne Sellers, the 17th overall pick in the 2025 WNBA draft, before she even suited up for a single preseason game. And the decision reveals the brutal reality of how expansion dreams become career nightmares in a 48-hour window. According to multiple beat reporters covering the Valkyries' inaugural season, the team announced the shocking roster cut on May 6th, less than 72 hours after training camp opened, making Sellers the highest drafted player waived before playing a minute in franchise history. The move blindsided fans who watched Sellers dominate at Maryland for 4 years, averaging 16.3 points per game her senior season and earning all Big Ten honors while leading the Terrapins to back-to-back NCAA tournament appearances. Her sudden dismissal wasn't just a roster transaction, it was the death of the promise that expansion would create opportunity for American college stars who've been waiting years for their WNBA shot. Right now, 14 more players are sitting in hotel rooms, refreshing transaction alerts on their phones, wondering if their childhood dreams die tonight, or if they get 72 more hours to prove they belong among the 144 roster spots in professional women's basketball. We're tracking every practice report, every beat writer's cryptic tweet, every depth chart adjustment that separates making the roster from getting a plane ticket home and a generic "we wish you well" statement from the front office. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you know who's getting cut and who's surviving the roster bloodbath before the official announcements drop, because in this league, careers end faster than training camp cuts can trend on social media. Sellers' release exposed the fault lines in the WNBA's expansion narrative that sold fans on 48 new roster spots with Toronto Tempo and Portland Fire joining the league in 2026, only to watch teams like Golden State prioritize European veterans over American draft picks who generated millions of views during March Madness. The Valkyries used their expansion draft capital and top 5 draft positioning to construct a roster heavy on international talent, selecting Lithuanian prospect Juste Jusait 5th overall as a draft and stash player who won't even join the team this season, while simultaneously cutting Sellers, who was projected by ESPN's mock drafts to go in the first round based on her explosive scoring ability and 3-level offensive game. After Sellers' waiver, only one Valkyries draft pick remained on the roster, Caitlin Chen, selected 30th overall out of Connecticut, meaning Golden State essentially discarded their lottery talent in favor of overseas free agents who never played a minute of Division I basketball. The timing of the cut amplified the controversy because it came during the first weekend of preseason games when teams typically evaluate players through at least one exhibition before making final decisions. Dallas Wings waived Mackenzie Forbes and Micaiah Herbert-Harrigan after facing Las Vegas in a preseason game, giving them a chance to showcase their skills under game conditions. Chicago Sky cut Arella Garantes, Tilly Bowler, and Sammy Pusis after a preseason matchup against the Brazilian national team, at least allowing them to compete for roster spots on an international stage. Los Angeles Sparks released Alyssa Utsby and Annalie Maley following exhibition action, and New York Liberty waived Caitlin Davis after preseason minutes. But Sellers never got that opportunity. She arrived at training camp, participated in practices for less than 72 hours, and received her release papers before ever stepping onto the court in a Valkyries uniform during a game that counted, even in the preseason. The backlash on social media erupted immediately, with fans accusing the Valkyries of wasting a draft pick and betraying the expansion promise that new teams would provide pathways for NCAA talent struggling to break into a league with only 12 roster spots per team. Critics pointed out that many WNBA franchises actually carry just 11 players due to salary cap constraints, making the competitive window even narrower for rookies trying to survive training camp against veteran free agents who've played professionally in Turkey, Spain, or Australia for years. The debate shifted into uncomfortable territory when some voices suggested international players were taking spots from deserving Americans, while others correctly identified that critique as nationalist gatekeeping in a sport that's always been global, with American stars like Breanna Stewart and Diana Taurasi earning more overseas than in the WNBA for over a decade. Sellers' college career at Maryland painted her as exactly the type of player expansion was supposed to elevate. She scored 1,573 career points across 4 seasons with the Marylands, showcasing a versatile offensive arsenal that included mid-range pull-ups, transition scoring, and improved three-point shooting that climbed to 34% her senior year. Maryland head coach Brenda Frese praised Sellers' leadership during the Terrapins' 2024 Big Ten tournament run, calling her the emotional engine of a team that upset higher-seeded opponents through sheer competitive will. NBA and WNBA draft analysts highlighted her athleticism and defensive potential, projecting her as a combo guard who could defend multiple positions at the professional level while providing secondary ball handling off the bench. Mock drafts from the Athletic and ESPN had Sellers going between picks 12 and 20, making her selection at 17 seem like solid value for an expansion team building from scratch. But projection and reality collide violently during training camp, when college dominance meets professional competition compressed into 72-hour evaluation windows. Beat reporters covering the Valkyries camp hinted at concerns about Sellers' consistency in practice scrimmages, suggesting her decision-making under pressure didn't translate as cleanly against WNBA-caliber defenders compared to Big Ten competition. The Valkyries' coaching staff, led by Natalie Nakase, who spent years as an NBA assistant with the Clippers, reportedly prioritized players with professional experience who understood defensive rotations and offensive spacing at an elite level immediately, rather than developmental projects requiring time to adjust to the speed and physicality of the WNBA game. Golden State's front office constructed a win-now roster for their inaugural season, signing veteran free agents like Odessi Sims and international stars from EuroLeague who could compete immediately rather than gambling on upside from untested rookies and minimizing risk by waiving Sellers before her salary became guaranteed for the entire season. Expansion draft mechanics also influenced Golden State's roster calculus in ways that disadvantaged NCAA prospects. The Valkyries selected players from existing WNBA rosters during the expansion draft, cherry-picking veterans other teams left unprotected because of salary cap limitations or positional redundancy. That process loaded Golden State's training camp with experienced professionals who had already survived multiple WNBA seasons, making it exponentially harder for rookies like Sellers to stand out during abbreviated evaluation periods. Connecticut Sun waived Maya Hollenshed and Abby Hugh during their roster cut window. Las Vegas Aces released Jordan Jenkins. Indiana Fever cut Bree Hall, Jillian Allenye, and Deona Gaston, trimming their training camp roster to make room for their core built around Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston. Atlanta Dream waived multiple camp invitees, and Washington Mystics released Morgan Jones and JoJo Lacey, illustrating how expansion's promise of more opportunity collided with the reality that 12 roster spots per team, and often just 11 due to cap constraints, creates a survival of the fittest environment, where even first-round picks aren't guaranteed 72 hours of evaluation before their WNBA dreams end. The injury crisis gripping the WNBA in 2025 further complicated roster construction and made veterans more valuable than developmental rookies. Seattle Storm forward Katie Lou Samuelson tore her ACL during training camp, and under the current collective bargaining agreement, her salary still counted against the team's cap while occupying a roster spot despite being out for the entire season. Indiana Fever faced a cascade of injuries that reduced their active roster to just 8 healthy players, forcing them to sign guard Ari McDonald on a hardship contract. Phoenix Mercury used a hardship exception to bring in Haley Jones after injuries to Kalia Copper, Alyssa Thomas, and Natasha Mack, leaving them with only 9 available players. Los Angeles Sparks became the first team to invoke the hardship rule, signing 2025 third-round pick Liatu King on May 20th. This injury-driven chaos incentivized teams to keep veterans with proven durability over rookies whose bodies hadn't been tested against the physical grind of a WNBA season compressed into 4 months with minimal rest days. The Sellers situation also highlighted the CBA uncertainty that froze free agency heading into 2026 and created roster construction paralysis across the league. The Players Union rejected the WNBA's initial collective bargaining proposal in mid-2025, with Phoenix Mercury star Satu Sabali calling it a slap in the face during public comments that revealed deep frustration over salary structures and working conditions. the league released the 2026 schedule in January without a finalized CBA or confirmed roster rules, leaving general managers unable to make informed decisions about core designations, expansion draft protections, or salary cap parameters. This uncertainty made veteran players with known quantities more attractive than rookies whose development timelines extended beyond the immediate 2026 season, pushing prospects like Sellers out of roster consideration in favor of experienced professionals who could contribute regardless of whatever new CBA terms emerged from negotiations. Comparable cases from WNBA history offer both hope and cautionary tales for Sellers' career trajectory. Erica Wheeler went undrafted in 2013 and bounced between training camp cuts and overseas contracts for years before finally sticking with Indiana Fever and evolving into the 2019 All-Star Game MVP, proving that initial rejection doesn't define a player's ultimate ceiling. Odessi Sims, now a veteran on the Valkyries roster, survived multiple hardship contracts and roster cuts early in her career before finding stability and becoming a reliable backup point guard for playoff teams. But countless other first-round picks never recovered from brutal training camp dismissals, with their confidence shattered and overseas options limited to lower-tier leagues that paid poorly and offered no pathway back to the WNBA. Haley Jones, the 6th overall pick in 2022, struggled to find consistent playing time with Indiana Fever and ended up on a hardship contract with Phoenix Mercury in 2025, illustrating how even lottery talent can descend into roster bubble purgatory within 3 years if development doesn't match front office expectations. Sellers now faces a career crossroads with 3 potential paths forward, none of them guaranteed. She could pursue hardship contract opportunities with injury-depleted teams like Indiana Fever, who led the league with 9 hardship signings in 2025 due to their catastrophic injury luck, gambling that a 10-day contract could showcase her skills and earn a rest-of-season deal. She could sign overseas with EuroLeague teams in Turkey, Spain, or Italy, where her scoring ability might translate more easily without the defensive responsibilities that made WNBA coaches hesitant, but that choice risks being forgotten by American scouts and falling out of WNBA consideration entirely. She could also wait for Toronto Tempo or Portland Fire to finalize our rosters after the expansion draft concludes, hoping that one of the new franchises sees value in a first-round talent that Golden State discarded too quickly, though both expansion teams face the same roster limitations and salary cap pressures that doomed her Valkyries tenure. The most likely scenario involves Sellers playing overseas during the 2026 season while staying in contact with WNBA agents, waiting for an injury crisis to create a hardship opening, and then gambling everything on a 72-hour audition that could either revive her professional career or confirm that her WNBA window closed before it ever truly opened. The Sellers waiver ultimately exposed the hollow promise of WNBA expansion when roster spots remain capped at 12, salary constraints force teams to carry 11, and veteran experience is prioritized over NCAA upside in a league that claims to celebrate women's basketball at all levels. 48 new roster spots sounded revolutionary until fans realized that international free agents and experienced professionals would claim most of those opportunities, leaving American college stars who generated March Madness viewership watching their WNBA dreams die in hotel conference rooms after 72 hours of practice. Golden State's decision wasn't cruel or unusual by league standards. It was simply the mathematical reality of survival economics in a sport where 144 roster spots exist for 200 players, fighting with their entire identities on the line. Cheyenne Sellers became the face of that brutal calculus, a first-round pick whose career might already be over before it began, unless she finds a way back through the hardship contract wilderness that's claimed so many players before her.